Hey, what's going on, guys? UFC Fight Night Austin, Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan is a little under 2 weeks away. It goes down on December 2nd, and this fight card truly deserves praise because this is one of the deepest UFC Fight Night cards in 2023. Without being able to remember every single fight on every single Fight Night card, off the top of my head, this is the best UFC Fight Night card of 2023 on paper. So I wanted to make a video going over some of these notable fights on this card and really breaking down this fight card because this is an amazing fight card and it deserves praise. And it is so good that maybe this is a hot take, but this fight card is so good that it is one fight away from being a pay-per-view quality fight card. That's how good this Fight Night card is. Now, the prelims. We'll start off by talking about the prelims. The prelims aren't that great, but they're not horrible for a Fight Night card. There's nothing really special about the prelims. Right now, currently headlining the prelims, you have Clay Guida and the boys versus Joaquim Silva. Underneath that, you have Miesha Tate versus Julia Avila. Underneath of that, you have Cody Brundage versus Zach Reese. Cody Brundage, ew, I don't even want to see Cody Brundage ever fight again after he got a DQ in his last fight. You know, putting on an absolute performance, a horrific performance. But these aren't terrible prelims. I mean, Joe Solecki versus Jakar Close is a really solid fight. Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa is a really good fight. Iho Potiera versus Rodolfo Bellato isn't a bad fight either. I mean, these prelims aren't excellent, but they're not like the worst prelims ever, like, you know, Mick Parkin versus Caio Machado, which was on the Brendan Allen versus Paul Craig card. So I'm not really hyping up the prelims too much, but the prelims aren't terrible. There's not like one staple prelim that we're super excited for. But honestly, the UFC has been known to rearrange cards. And sometimes a fight that you think would be on the main card, they move to the prelims. So that may change in the next 2 weeks. The UFC has been known to do that. If you're a newer fan, don't fall into the trap that you always think all the best fights are going to be on the main card, because sometimes that's not the case, and they may end up switching around like a fight or two from the main card, moving it to the prelims. But the current main card is incredible. Right now, opening up the main card, and again, they may shift around this bout order. This bout order doesn't actually look correct to me right now, but you have Khalil Roundtree versus Azamat Murzakanov. That is a straight up banger. You have Khalil Roundtree on a 4-fight winning streak, brutalized Chris Daukaus in his last fight. Fight before that, kind of have a robbery win over Dustin Jacoby. But either way, Khalil Roundtree has looked really good, and he's always a fun fighter to watch. And then you have Azamat Murzakanov, who's undefeated, 13-0, getting nothing but finishes. He has 10 finishes out of 13 wins. His last fight, okay, against Dustin Jacoby, he got a decision win, but he looks like an incredible prospect for the light heavyweight division. So this is a banger fight. Honestly, I think it'll be super exciting. I think it's semi-relevant to the division. So, I mean, this is a really good light heavyweight fight, and I think, honestly, it'll just be exciting. Both guys are of a decent skill level. I'm not saying they're the elite of the elite. They're not future champions or anything. Who knows with Murzakanov? I don't see that right now, but this is a perfect matchup, and this is a perfect kind of measuring stick to see where Murzakanov is. You know, he fought his last fight, got the win over Dustin Jacoby. They had him scheduled against Volkan Ozdemir. That fight fell out. I don't remember why. And now he's fighting Khalil Roundtree, who's surging in the light heavyweight division on a 4-fight win streak. So I absolutely love this fight. Then moving up on the card, you have Punahele Soriano versus Dustin Stolfus. This is the worst fight on the main card, to be honest. Both of them are coming off losses. But Soriano lost to Roman Khabibulov, who's an excellent middleweight prospect, and Stolfus got stopped by Abus Magomedov, who at the time was an excellent prospect in the middleweight division, who went on to look very good in the first round against Sean Strickland, who then became the middleweight champion. So it's not like these two guys are horrible. This is the worst fight on the main card, and this is where, honestly, the level really picks up in terms of fight quality and skill level after this fight. But that's still a decent fight. I'm looking forward to that fight. It's not something, you know, if it got canceled, I'd be devastated, but it's still a very good fight. But moving up on the card, we have a straight up welterweight banger. We have Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. I love this fight. You have Kelvin Gastelum coming down from middleweight, which has been speculated about for a while. He pulled out of the fight against Shavkat Rakhmonov, and he's fighting Sean Brady, who has had multiple fights booked. He's had to pull out for different reasons. He was supposed to fight Jack Della Maddalena not that long ago, had to pull out of that fight. Before that, he was supposed to fight Michel Pereira. He pulled out of that fight. His last fight was against Bilal Muhammad at UFC 280, where he got stopped by Bilal Muhammad. Before he lost to Bilal Muhammad, who Bilal Muhammad's now a title contender, but before he lost to Bilal Muhammad, people were on the Sean Brady hype train. People thought Sean Brady is the future of the welterweight division. That's a bit of an exaggeration, But a lot of people were very high on Sean Brady because of his undefeated record. He's 15-1. He's a good fighter, has good grappling. His striking leaves a lot to be desired. His stamina leaves a lot to be desired, but he's a very good fighter. And now you have Kelvin Gastelum coming back to welterweight. He was supposed to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov on the Noche card. He pulled out of that fight. The fight before that, he had a win over Chris Curtis, but it was controversial because you had a headbutt that dropped Chris Curtis. He ends up winning anyway. It wasn't like a dominant win by any means. And Kelvin Gastelum's been a guy who's been up at middleweight for years. I mean, the last time he fought at welterweight was so long ago. I don't even remember what fight it was at this point. I believe maybe it was the Johnny Hendricks fight, and I think he missed weight for that fight. Yeah, it was the Johnny Hendricks fight, and he missed weight for that. So Kelvin Gastelum hasn't fought, or he didn't miss weight for that, actually. He hasn't fought at welterweight since 2016. So Kelvin Gastelum, I'm very curious how he deals with the weight cut. He's had weight cutting issues for a while. He missed weight multiple times over the course of his UFC career. And the fact that it's been 7 years since he fought at welterweight, a division that a lot of people always thought he should be in, it's going to be, I'm going to be interested. Honestly, my early prediction for that fight is I'm worried that Kelvin Gastelum's going to miss weight and pull out because he's going to have to be hospitalized on the day of the fights or the day before the fights, the day of the weigh-ins. So I'm worried about that. But if this fight goes through, Kelvin Gastelum's super exciting to watch fight. I mean, the fight against Israel Adesanya was crazy. The finish against Bisping was really solid. You know, I mean, the Israel Adesanya fight was one of the best fights ever. And also Kelvin Gastelum, he never quits in a fight. No matter what. Like, I remember him getting outclassed by Robert Whittaker the whole entire time. He's just marching forward and trying to land a shot, trying to find a way to finish Robert Whittaker. So I love watching Kelvin Gastelum fight. I think this is a good matchup. I think this is perfect matchmaking by the UFC. Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum is incredible. Then when you move up the card, you have a nasty bantamweight matchup. You have Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo. I love this fight. Deiveson Figueiredo moving up from flyweight to bantamweight. We've been waiting to see his bantamweight debut for a while now. You have Rob Font, who's coming off the loss to Corey Sandhagen, but Corey Sandhagen's in title contention right now, and Rob Font took that fight on short notice. He was training for another fight, but then he took the fight against Corey Sandhagen when Umar Nurmagomedov pulled out, and it was like a month earlier than he was scheduled to fight. So I kind of write that loss off a little bit. Plus, Corey Sandhagen wrestled him the entire time, so he probably never even expected that out of Corey Sandhagen. You know, I know he's lost 3 out of his last 4, but he does have that nasty win over Adrian Yanez. And look who he's losing to. Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Vera, Jose Aldo. So it's not bad losses by Rob Font. I know he's getting up there in age, but he's still a very skilled fighter. He has nasty hands. Doesn't have the most power, but he also has a nasty chin as well. I mean, Marlon Chito Vera literally sweet chin musicked him, and he was able to survive and make it all the way to a decision. Then you have Deiveson Figueiredo, former flyweight champion. I mean, he's been fighting Brandon Moreno nonstop for the last like 3 or 4 years at this point. When's the last time he's fought someone not named Brandon Moreno? November of 2020. It's been over 3 years. Over 3 years since we've seen Deiveson Figueiredo fight someone not named Brandon Moreno. And all those fights, outside of the one at 263 where he kind of got dominated, were incredible. The one that went to a draw without the point deduction, Deiveson Figueiredo wins that fight, never fights Brandon Moreno again probably, or at least not for a while. Then they have the second fight, Brandon Moreno just outclasses him. Then they have the third fight, which was very close, back and forth, and Figgy sneaks out a win there. Then they have the rematch, and it's a doctor stoppage due to, I believe it was an eye where he got punched in the eye and it got swelled up. But the one thing about Figgy a lot of people have been talking about for a while is he cuts a lot of weight to get to flyweight. He's getting up there in age. The older you get, the harder it is to cut that weight. And you look at Figgy right now, he's 35 years old, going on 36. He actually turns 36 in December. So a couple of weeks after this fight, he turns 36. So it'll be nice to see him up at bantamweight. A lot of people have been speculating about it for a while. And also, I mean, is Figgy not one of the funnest fighters to watch fight? I mean, he's always in exciting fights. He's super well-rounded. And he's getting a good test against Rob Font. But honestly, if you look at the bantamweight division, I think this was the most manageable fight for him right now. So I think this is excellent matchmaking by the UFC. I cannot wait to see this fight. Then you move up on the card, the co-main event, you have Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green. This is crazy. In an alternate universe, this is, you know, Grant Dawson versus Jalen Turner in an alternate universe. But against all odds, Dan Hooker beats Jalen Turner. A lot of people were counting him out, myself included. And then against all odds, Bobby Green starches Grant Dawson at the Apex. Grant Dawson is still sleeping at the Apex as we speak. And then they match these two guys up. This is one of those fights that, you know, honestly, a couple months ago, I would have thought, okay, that's kind of one of those fights where you have two veterans of the sport who both have fan-friendly fight styles, and they're going to book them against each other because they're on downslopes in their career. Well, that's not really the case. They're both, they both won their last fight. Dan Hooker showed unbelievably durability and stamina in his fight against Jalen Turner. Got a win there back at UFC 290 in July. Even like broke his wrist or hand or arm or something in that fight, or cracked it or something along those lines, and took a beating, but Jalen Turner got tired, and then Dan Hooker was able to put it on him. And then you have Bobby Green, who he's won his last 2 fights, okay? One was the dead body of Tony Ferguson, but Grant Dawson, everyone expected Grant Dawson to go out there and dominate him, and Bobby Green clipped him early, KO'd him, and Bobby Green's a guy who's been around forever. He's been in the sport forever. He's 37 years old, and I've talked about this many times when talking about Bobby Green. Some nights he shows up and he looks like an elite level fighter. Other nights he shows up and he just doesn't look that good. So I'm curious what version of Bobby Green shows up on this fight night card. But stylistically, this is such a fun matchup. Dan Hooker is so fun to watch. He's so exciting in pretty much every matchup that he's in. I mean, I don't remember when he's had a boring fight. He starched Claudio Puelles. The fight before that, he got finished early by Arnold Allen. Okay, the fight before that got starched by Islam Makhachev, had his arm ripped off. But the Nasrat Haqparast fight was exciting. The Michael Chandler fight was exciting. The Dustin Poirier fight. I say this every time I talk about Dan Hooker. If you have not seen Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker, please go watch that fight. That was one of the best fights of the pandemic era of 2020 in the Apex. I will never forget that fight. It's probably the best fight of 2020, and it was just absolutely incredible. So I'm really excited to see this matchup, and both guys are relevant to the division. I never thought I'd be saying that at the end of 2023. MMA is so hard to predict, and both these guys are relevant in the lightweight division. Both guys are currently ranked in the top 15 of the division. So with a win here, whoever wins is going to be on a little decent win streak. You have Bobby Green, who on a 2-fight win streak, he'll be on a 3-fight winning streak. And same for Dan Hooker, 2-fight win streak, he'll be on a 3-fight winning streak. And not that long ago, it wasn't looking that good for either guy. It really wasn't. So I love this matchup. I think this is a perfect co-main event. This is the epitome of co-main event for a fight night card. I love this fight. Then you have the main event, which I am really looking forward to. This is excellent matchmaking by the UFC. We have Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. I love this matchup. I absolutely love this matchup. This is kind of a fight that's kind of been talked about really for it seems like the last 2 years, because realistically, I feel horrible for Arman Tsarukyan because I feel like he should be much further along in his career than he is currently, because his last fight he fought Joaquim Silva because Renato Moicano pulled out. Or actually, I think that fight was booked prior, but that fight got canceled. Then he got booked against Joaquim Silva like a month later. Then the fight before that, he beat Damir Ismagulov, who was ranked in the top 15 at the time, but that win hasn't aged quite well. The fight before that, and the fight I really want to hone in on, is against Mateusz Gamrot, where he lost, but he should have won. And Gamrot went on to fight a surging Beneil Dariush at that point in time. Gamrot lost to Dariush. But really, it should have been Arman's fight because Arman beat Gamrot, in my opinion. So Arman should have had this jump up in competition, but really he's kind of been stuck in neutral, it seems. A lot of people are super high on Arman. A lot of people want to see if Arman can make his way back up and get a rematch with Islam Makhachev. They fought early in their careers. I believe Arman, it was his UFC debut or close to it, and he took it on short notice. So a lot of people have kind of been dreaming of that rematch, and Arman just hasn't had that opportunity. You have guys like Fiziev getting the opportunity against Gaethje. You have Gamrot getting the opportunity against Dariush, which he lost. And Arman really hasn't had that opportunity yet, and he's finally getting it against Beneil Dariush. And Beneil Dariush was arguably really close to a title shot. A lot of people said he was arguably the number 1 contender, but he lost to Charles Oliveira at UFC 289. And he got absolutely starched. But before that, he's on this crazy long winning streak. He beat Gamrot. He beat Tony Ferguson when Tony Ferguson wasn't a dead body. He beat Diego Fajeda. These aren't the greatest wins, but he was still on this crazy long winning streak. And a lot of people were saying, I think Dariush is the guy to beat Islam Makhachev. Now, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but people were thinking Dariush's style of anti-grappling has very good striking. They thought Beneil might be the guy to beat Islam Makhachev. He gets starched by Charles Oliveira badly in the first round. So he needs to give a contender. The lightweight division, and honestly, this deserves a video in itself. For a while, the lightweight division, it just seems like it can't get over the hump. Every time we get some fresh contenders, they try to fight their way up or fight like a veteran and take their spot who's ranked higher, and they lose. Fiziev versus Gaethje, Gamrot versus Beneil, even, kind of a similar version of Jalen Turner versus Dan Hooker, even though I think Turner was ranked a little bit above him. It seems like the top of the division. Then you have Dustin Poirier not really wanting to fight any of the new guys in the division. You have this division that just seems like everyone wants the turnover at the top, but we can't get the turnover at the top. And this is an opportunity for Arman Tsarukyan to go out there and claim a spot really in like the top 5 of the lightweight division. And also, if Arman wins this fight, let's say he starches Beneil Dariush, he's probably one fight away from a title shot. I mean, who doesn't want to see Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan too, especially if Arman goes out there and gets a big win over Beneil Dariush and then maybe one more win. Honestly, the way the lightweight division looks right now, there's not a whole long list of contenders that Islam hasn't already beaten. Arman could beat Beneil Dariush and get a title shot next, depending on how the lightweight division plays out, if Charles Oliveira is ready in time, depending on when they want to make that fight. Obviously, we don't know yet, but this is a massive fight for the lightweight division. And overall, I mean, this fight in general is very meaningful for the division, but it's also very high-level skill. I mean, Beneil Dariush, very good defensive grappling, pretty good striking, and Arman, excellent striking that he's improving on. He's mainly kick-heavy, doesn't have the best hands, but excellent grappling, excellent offensive and defensive grappling, and he's evolving, and he's super young as well. So this could kind of be a changing of the guard fight, and honestly, this fight night card is just incredible. The main event, I absolutely love, and honestly, as good as this fight night card is, the main card is, if you threw a title fight on the top of this card, I know the co-main event wouldn't be like massively spectacular, but if you threw a title fight on the top of this card, like let's say you had Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis as the main event, and every fight shifted down one, this is a quality pay-per-view. This is a pay-per-view that I'm like, damn, this is really good. So if you just threw a title fight on the top of this card, this is a pay-per-view quality card. I absolutely love UFC Fight Night Austin. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'll have a prediction video coming next week, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.